welcome to the latest CTO Craft online event. Today we're actually launching a brand new event type, Office Hours, and we're thrilled to have Adelina Chalmers here to join us to mark the occasion. If this is your first time at a CTO Craft event, let me tell you a bit more about us. CTO Craft is a mentoring, coaching community for technology leaders around the world, focusing on supporting technologists in their leadership growth. Community members are over 7,000, and CTO Craft provides them with one-to-one coaching, mentoring groups, a curated Slack community, and events just like this one that happen every week online. If you're not a member of the CTO Craft community and are interested in becoming one, or you'd like to get an update on these events or on emails, I'll post some links in the chat to help you do that. A huge thank you to our online partner, AWS, for helping make these events possible. I'm Megan, and I'm the community manager at CTO Craft. Today joining me, as I've mentioned, is Adelina Chalmers, CTO strategic advisor and founder at the Geek Whisperer. Adelina, can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, I don't normally do a hell of a lot of introduction because people don't usually care much about who you are. They want to know how you're going to help them. The reason the company is called the Geek Whisperer is because people kept observing that I worked really well with engineering leadership instead of just general leadership. And they kept calling me the Geek Whisperer, the Geek Whisperer. So I just took the company name on, but I've actually been working for 11 years. I have a very straight to the heart of the matter approach. I don't like to be fluffy or go around the topic, but just really talk about real examples, real issues, real challenges. So feel free to bring up real situations in this conversation, and let's have a chat about it. I'm really excited to talk about some case studies today.
Amazing. As mentioned, this is a brand new event type to allow you to ask Adelina for advice that is tailored to your situation. So how we're going to do things. Firstly, if you could just give a very brief one-sentence overview of your question in the Ask a Question link below the video next to the chat bot, you'll then be invited on the stage to ask Adelina your question directly. She'll then ask you maybe some context questions, get a bit of an understanding about your situation, and from there she'll be able to offer you advice in a conversational manner rather than more of a general answer that can be typical for fireside chats. So just to ease things into it, because we don't want to put anyone on the spot to be the first one to come on, when it comes to preparing a technical presentation to a board or C-suite, what's the most important thing to keep at the front of your mind?
So what do people think? Is this a question that you'd like us to discuss? That's kind of the first thing I'd like to talk to you about, because often I find when people think about presenting to the board, they're so deep into the woods of the tech that they forget that the rest of the C-suite doesn't actually understand tech. And there's some real clear telltale signs that they didn't understand what you were talking about. They very, very rarely will admit that to you openly. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard a board that openly admitted to somebody that they didn't understand what they said. Because, if you think about it, everybody on the board wants to pretend that they're an expert and they know what's going on and they understand everything. But in reality, they all are wondering, what the hell is he or she talking about? But they wouldn't straight out say that. So one of the clear signs that they didn't understand your presentation is the fact that there are literally no questions. They all go, maybe they say, oh, that's interesting, or thank you very much, or does anyone have anything they want to add, or anything like that. But they don't say much more than that. And they don't ask you any questions about maybe the timeline, because they probably didn't understand that. And if you require a decision from them, so if it's just an update, and actually there's something I want to mention about just an update. But if it's just an update, then they will just not ask any questions, and they say you get these vague reactions. If, however, you start getting lots of questions about risk, then you know that they definitely didn't understand it. Because and the reason they will ask you questions about risk is that it normally is in the context of you asking them for agreement on something. Could be a budget, could be a roadmap change, could be something that's likely to impact the business bottom line. And when you make that kind of presentation and you require a decision, you require approval or negotiation or disapproval, they will then start asking risk questions if they didn't understand what's going on. Because then they're trying to understand, if I say yes to this, what will happen? This is why the original presentation you delivered should have told them that in the first place. Now, I don't like talking like a radio. So before I perhaps tell you the sort of things that you should have in the presentation so they do understand it and you minimize the risk of them bombarding you with risk questions, which are very difficult and often go down rabbit holes that still make no sense to anybody. Would anybody like to come on stage and have a chat with me about what do you think the board actually wants to hear about in order to understand it and also not to bombard you with risk and difficult questions? I'd love it if someone would like to come to the stage and have a conversation with me about it. You don't have to know the answer, by the way. We can discuss it. But I'm very much an interaction type of person. I don't really like lecturing. Even when I work with Cambridge University and I do my thing at the Institute of Manufacturing, I still make the session interactive rather than just lecture act people for an hour straight. So what do people think? Does anybody feel like they want to have a chat with me? Nobody?
Giving some time for people to type out their
Megan,
enthusiasm.
can I ask as well, because obviously it's the first time we're doing this, how can someone come on stage? Do you have to kind of prove them and they just have to respond by commenting in the message? How does it work for people?
All you have to do is you can put a question in the ask a question. Doesn't have to be a coherent. It could just be like a little me, please, little hands up so that I know that you're interested. Then I will just click on your name and invite you on the stage. It's very straightforward, very easy. You don't have to have your camera on if you're worried about that. It can just be your voice. Also, if there are individuals that maybe you have a question but you don't feel comfortable going on stage at all, even with camera off and no mic, just type out your question. Adelina, I'm sure, will be more than happy to answer it, even with just a typed out question. But yeah, the friendly group of people. Don't worry about stage fright. Don't worry about this, being used for anything. This is the first run of the event, and we want to get your guys' opinion on it as well.
Oh, hi, Joel.
Joel. Brill.
Thank you very much for coming forward.
Yeah, being the first person is always a bit scary. Brill, I'm inviting you on screen now. So you should have received an invite.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for your question. What would you say were the differences in roles between a CTO and a technical co-founder in a startup? I'd be happy to know about the KPIs to share with them as well. Mm-hmm. Hi, Joel.
Questions for you.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Apologies.
So I said, I've got some echo here. 1 second. I don't know where the options are.
Oh, we seem to have lost Joel. In the meantime, Daniel, would you like to come and have a chat about your question? I know you and I know each other from LinkedIn, Daniel. So I don't know if you feel we can go back to Joel when he's able to reconnect.
Or Suzanne, are you happy to come onto the stage? Bro.
Ooh, right.
No.
Oh, Joel is back. Sorry, Suzanne. We will get you on stage straight away. Sorry, Joel. You vanished, so I thought I'll get someone else in.
While we're learning about the technology.
Yeah. The irony has to slap us in the face a little bit, no? Thank you so much for coming forward, Joel. I know you work with CTOs yourself, so tell me your perspective, or also thanks so much for coming forward, and what made you you kind of come forward and have a chat with me.
Well, I thought it'd be easier once someone had done it. And I think it's a really interesting subject presenting to the board. So I think the question you asked was, what should you include when you're presenting?
Yes.
And I think they're really focusing on the impact and getting ahead of the game on the risks. Is really valuable. So anticipating what they're going to be worried about, but also reminding them why this is so exciting in terms that make sense to the board. It's not about what's technologically exciting. It's about what's the impact going to be for the company on the goals that the board have bought into for the company.
Yes, absolutely spot on. And one of the because I always like to have formulas. This is an interesting subject, because you mentioned the fact that not focusing on the tech, but actually on the benefit to the business. Real situation, and I want to raise this and discuss it with you a little bit, because I'd love to hear your perspective, if you've seen this yourself or experienced it yourself. I worked with a VP of innovation in a company of 2,000 people, and he was trying to get a product redesign, which meant that the roadmap was different, which meant that the business impact was going to be, quite large in terms of operational shifts, risks associated with that, shifting to a new design. It's always risky. Are the clients still going to be happy? Is it really going to work? We know all of those things. And this particular VP of innovation kept focusing, and I actually wrote down what he said because I thought he was crazy. So the board kept saying to him, but how is this going to work? And he kept going back to how the embedded operating system is going to work. So he started saying to them things like, the embedded operating system is free. So then the board would go and say things like, why is it free? Someone must have paid for it. And then just keep going down and down rabbit holes. And they just made no sense whatsoever. 6 months until I spoke to them. For 6 months, they kept running around this tale. And he kept saying to me, they want me to explain to them embedded software. It's really hard. They don't get it. They're idiots. I just wanted to ask, have you seen this yourself? And do you have an equivalent example? Because I just think that the best kind of thing that shows, because he was talking about risk in terms of, look, it's open source software. It's not going to, we're spending lots of money on the new thing. And, totally the wrong thing to tell the board, right? Because you make them freak out and go, open source? Does that mean they can hack us?
Yeah. That's when you're sort of in just like ships in the night passing one another without really communicating at all.
Beautiful analogy, indeed.
Yeah, and I think I mean, the more you understand your board, the more you've worked with them in the past, the easier it is to anticipate what those things are going to be. And one thing that can be really helpful, as you've said, it's sort of scary for the board to ask some questions when they're in front of all the other board members. And so if you've got something that's quite critical to move or seems to be stuck, it can be useful to meet up with them individually, where you can have much more of a conversation, and it's much less risky for them to say, I have no idea what you're talking about here. And so it's easier then to dig into what are the fears that we're going to need to overcome, and then what do they need to hear in a board meeting in order to feel confident those fears have been overcome.
Very good point, Joel, as well, because I was talking to a CTO about this the other day, and we were saying that you should never surprise the board.
Yeah.
If it's a surprise, it's never a good surprise, even if you think it's a good surprise, because people get thrown off by that sort of thing. And if we have time, I can actually explain biologically why a board is scared of surprises. There's actually a biological reason for it, which I find fascinating. Joel, you're a superstar. Thank you so much for coming forward. Really love chatting to you, and I might call on you a bit later on in the session. Do you mind if I let Suzanne follow up with
that? Would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing the other answers. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Suzanne, can I bring you back online? Awesome job. Megan, Suzanne is ready. We can pull the curtain on Suzanne. This is my first time with this kind of software, by the way, and I find it really odd.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. And I can
Brilliant.
also see you, which is nice.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Suzanne. Tell us a bit more about your question.
Yes, so I'm a very junior CTO. I've been a CTO for less than a year, and this is all very, very new to me. And one thing I've been asked recently is to share proper, concrete KPIs with the board. Considering we have some in terms of customer support and sales. And product, they share the roadmap and the amount of customers meeting they will have, all these kind of things. And I'm starting sharing a few, but I'm not sure which ones would have the most impact and would be the most meaningful for them. So yeah, that's the question. And the ones I'm sharing for the moment is the amount of critical bugs that we've had in production during a month, and the time between the merge requests and the actual merge.
Okay. I was going to ask you actually if you can share with me what, which, because there can be a million different types of KPIs, merge requests. Okay, so here's the so before I give you an answer, I'd like to ask a few more questions if you don't mind. And obviously, if you feel that some of them are too deep, just say don't feel able to answer that, and that's perfectly fine as well, right? So one thing, please correct me if I misunderstood you so far. So the board has asked you to present the KPIs for engineering, and the KPIs you thought about sharing so far are the critical bugs in production and the time between merge requests.
Yeah.
What made you decide on these two?
The time between merge requests is it came from a pain that was expressed by the developers themselves. The merge requests were taking too long and were taking too long to be actually merged. So that was creating a lot of issues. And so that was an improvement internal to the team that we wanted. And so I wanted to bring it forward to the board as well. Considering that they are starting to be well educated about the fact that code that is just waiting to be merged is losing value and creating risk. So this is something that they are aware of. And the critical bugs, we don't have a lot. So I think it basically reflects pretty well on us that we don't have a lot of production problems.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question then, and then you'll see where this is going, hopefully. What do you think are the board trying to achieve by asking you to share these KPIs?
Well, I think one reason is, tech is expensive. We have been recruiting a lot. It's the largest team in the company so far. And they want to justify these costs for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be probably the main thing.
Is that what they told you when they invited you to present?
No, that's not. But I'm well aware that they know we're the biggest team, and we're a very young startup. So in terms of salaries as well, I mean, tech is doing well in the company compared to other departments.
Would you be able to help me understand the context of them inviting you to present to the board the KPIs the engineering has?
Yeah, it emerged when the CEO, who's also in charge of the product, asked me. Basically, he's presenting the roadmap and how well we are advancing on the roadmap, and he said, "Well, at this point, he's talking a little bit about the tech as well, but without concrete data or without a specific slide that's dedicated to tech. So he wanted to basically give me more space in this meeting to present tech things.
And what value does he think that speaking about tech specifically and not product roadmap alone is going to bring to the board?
Well, we're in a constant effort, or I am actually in a constant effort to promote tech within the company and try and make them understand as many things as possible in terms of complexity, difficulties that we can have, and the impact also that it will have on the customers and on themselves.
Okay. Do I have more questions or have I run out?
We can go on for hours. I'm fine.
Okay, brilliant. So why do you think that the board needs to understand more about tech, within the company? Where's that need coming from?
I think they are generally interested and curious because I've created this curiosity in them by sharing spontaneously things with them from the start. And yeah, they want to understand more than they do, for sure.
Okay. So I'll go back. So please correct me if I misunderstood the context you're in, because this is why a question in isolation without a story behind it can be horribly misinterpreted, and someone in my shoes can give the wrong advice, right? Because actually, I don't take a cookie cutter approach to these things. Context matters enormously. The dynamic matters enormously. There's a lot of factors at play. So that's why I'm asking you all these questions. So I hope you'll forgive me.
It's the 5 whys. I do it with everyone all the time, so I'm fine.
Yeah, it's just that, you know what I mean? It can be. So to my mind, from the little pinprick of information I know about your situation, it sounds like I'd love to understand more about the thought process of the CEO. However, the role of the tech presentation in this case is for you to know the CEO's product roadmap presentation, and for you to then, your presentation is almost like a backup to that, to say, well, when he said to you that by January 2023, we're going to be here with the product, this is what tech is doing to make sure that happens. And, giving critical bugs in production or time between merge requests, those are details that the board normally don't understand. They will say things like, so what? Yeah, and? So what they need to know is, okay, fair enough, but what does that mean considering the product roadmap? Right? So the board is, so I would suggest, critical bugs in production. If you say we have 1,000 critical bugs in production, the board will be, and what does that mean? It's the equivalent of saying to a board, when Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, he didn't say it will be 4 gig of data. He said it will be 3,000 songs or 12,000. I can't remember how many now, but it was something that's super easy for you to think, oh, I can fit 12,000 songs on this. Well, if he said it's 4 gig of data or 8 gig of data, whichever how much money you want to spend on this thing, it'd be like, and that's what so for me, when you make this presentation, if I could suggest, you have a chat with the CEO and say, right, can you walk me through your presentation, or can I have access to your information, what you're going to present, or your slide deck, or whatever it is, the format is going to do it. And for you to look at that roadmap and kind of go, what is engineering doing to make sure product hits these elements in the roadmap? And describing those not in number of bugs, but in things like, you can say, we've reduced the number of bugs that come up on average from something that takes us 5 days out of 5 in a week to 2 days out of 5, which means that we should be able to hit this point in the roadmap because we have 4 days a week where we're only working on features. That's kind of how the board, you see what I mean, would get it, because then it's about the benefit, not the output. Output is critical bugs in production. The benefit is we're able to do it in this amount of time. So I will actually tell you something that a lot of people don't realize. And I don't like it when it's abstract. This is why I wanted to give you a specific example. The board cares about three things always, regardless of what it is. The three things that the board cares about are cost, and you just mentioned earlier yourself about the cost of engineering being high. So then, is the cost justified? Is it so? If, for example, you're telling me that you recruited a lot more people recently, so the cost of engineering went up, so you want to justify to the board that those engineers are adding value, then you can present your presentation by saying, if we were doing this roadmap with the engineers we had 3 months ago, we would be 6 months behind the roadmap. But because we hired these 10 people, we're actually now able to hit the roadmap because they're working on these areas, which means that they'll be able to hit this point, that milestone, that milestone. You see what I mean? So that's why I was trying to get to the heart of what are you trying to achieve with this presentation to the board? And it's always about effectively, the question I always ask myself is, what question do I want them to say yes to silently in my mind? Is the question, engineering is worth all the money you're investing? Is the question, we are on track, don't worry, there's no risk here? Is the question, I know we were rubbish at tech debt earlier, but we are making up for it. Look how we're doing it. And they said, yes, I can see that. So always silently in your head, ask yourself, what is the real message behind what I'm trying to say this when I'm aligning this with the product roadmap? Are you still with me so far?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Because I want to finish up that point about what the board cares about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. What are the other two? We want to know.
Yeah. So the first one is cost. The other one is speed.
Yeah.
And I'll go through each of them. And the third one is quality. The board cares only about these three things. And I will tell you, actually, go further and say, the problem that causes all of these three things always comes back to one of three things as well: people, process, or experience of leadership. So coming back to the board, if, for example, so you mentioned cost, right? So the cost is, for example, engineering cost has gone up. Either we've had to hire more people. Is that working? Hiring more people, is that justified? Is that really just adding more brains to the same table, feeding on the budget, but actually not delivering anything? Show me that that's working. Then the speed is, for example, is having more people now faster or slower or the same? And if it's slower or the same, why is it slower or the same? So kind of justifying that. And then the third one, quality. Have the number of bugs or customer tickets gone down because now you have this bigger team, or you spend more money on tools, or you spend more money on experts or consultants or whatever it is that you've done? So this is what the board cares about. The board are bored of details. That's one thing I'll kind of try and make it. If you talk about detail, like number of bugs, time between merge requests, I will bet you money 99% of the time, 99% of boards don't even know what a merge request is.
Well, I've taken a lot of time to explain it before, but yeah, I see what you mean.
They don't care. They actually don't care, to be honest.
Yeah.
They might pretend they care, but they don't. And that's but yeah, does that make sense so far? Do you have any follow-up questions about it?
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Can you, before you go, can you give us any idea how you'll change your presentation or what you're going to do as a result of what we said now?
Yeah, I think, well, first thing is we recruited 2 engineers who started last Monday, and the next presentation I'm doing with the board is next Monday. And so I'll talk about the achievements that they have had in the last week and what they'll be working on next.
Brilliant. And that impact, how that fits into that roadmap. Always link it back. So one of the things that I was going to talk to Joel earlier was how I said earlier about, and I want to leave you these 3 points, okay? I wrote so if you want to see this in writing, I wrote a LinkedIn post about this just a few days ago. If you look at my profile and scroll down through the history, you'll see it was only 2 days ago or so. When the board want a presentation from engineering, they one of the key mistakes engineering leadership makes when they present to the board, and I have to tell you, I've seen this in companies of 40, 50,000 people. This is not a startup problem. This is a problem at all company levels, okay? When the board presents the tech strategy, which is what you basically effectively you're doing, they often forget to align that strategy with the business strategy. By telling you that you should look at that product roadmap and align your presentation and show the connection constantly between what your engineers are doing and those milestones in that roadmap, then you are aligning your presentation to the business strategy. If you don't do that and you talk about KPIs like critical bugs and all the rest of it, the board will be like, so what? And the challenge with that is that they could start asking you lots of difficult questions and make the meeting really awkward. I hope they never do, but I've seen it happen lots of times. So first thing, align. This is why I was encouraging you earlier to align your what you're going to say with the milestones, and remind them of those milestones. That, let's say your CEO is called John. I don't know his name or her name, but let's say they're called John. Align literally, these engineers are working on this, which feeds into this milestone that Joan mentioned earlier of achieving blah by this time. Are you with me? Yeah. And then the second one is, what are the risks involved in changing the roadmap? So, for example, or like for example, if you're not changing the roadmap because that's not what you're presenting, what are the risks involved in? I'm going to invent some stuff now because obviously I don't know your whole situation, but you said you added 2 more engineers into the mix. So the risk could be that these engineers could delay things because they need time to ramp up. So how are you introducing them into the business to make sure they provide as much value as fast as possible? And then the third point is, what are the benefits of changing, or the investment required, or the return on investment? So if you need more engineers in the future, where is the gap right now that's going to be filled by those people, if that's the case, or tools that they might need or whatever? But anyway, these are the 3 points that boards always want to know when tech is presenting something. Even if it is, we'll just carry on as is, still mentioning why this is the right thing to do. This is the lowest risk option, why this is. Boards are mainly about risk and benefit. Those are the things that they really worry about. Yeah, sorry, did you have any other questions or anything else you wanted to say?
Nope, it's all good, and hopefully someone else will
Yeah. No,
have
thank you
another
so
one.
much for
But
coming
yeah, it's good.
forward. It was brilliant. Thank you so much. And
You.
please connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't already.
Yeah, I've just done it.
Oh,
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Daniel, you raised the question as well. Would you like us to have a chat about it? The question that Daniel was raising was, what would you say were the differences in roles between a CTO and a technical co-founder in a startup? I have the answer to that question, but as I said earlier, I don't really enjoy being a radio. So if Daniel, if you wouldn't mind, you don't need to have your camera on if you like, but I'd love to have a chat with you about this. Or indeed, if someone else would prefer to have a chat about this, I'm happy to do that too. Dun, dun. Okay, well, Daniel is deciding whether or not he wants to come forward. I will start answering that question. But if anyone else would like to discuss that or something else, please feel free to do so. So the pattern that I see is that the original tech founder often is called CTO, and they keep that role even beyond. So about the point when they get to 20 engineers, they then hire a VP of engineering who effectively starts running the engineering team and does operations, processes, make sure things are running smoothly in the team. So when the difference in roles between a CTO and a technical co-founder in a startup is, well, actually, usually they're the same person. The difference that becomes between the CTO who's the original tech founder, and the VP of engineering, is that the VP of engineering is effectively in charge of delivery. They are responsible for making sure that, well, effectively actually what Suzanne was doing earlier, that the roadmap between tech and product is aligned and delivered on. What I've seen in some startups, the CTO gets the job title of CSO, Chief Scientific Officer, which means that the original CTO was usually highly academic. They have zero interest in business operations or business in general, and they just like to do R&D. And the startup obviously wants to keep them on board as they're growing, but they become a CSO. So then they have a CSO, a CTO, and a VP of engineering. And in this kind of situation, it's interesting because effectively you have a microorganism, a small startup, emulating a massive corporate that has a CTO office, which is, all based on research, R&D, and innovation. And that, that comes with a very interesting set of challenges in itself. So we will see. So if that's kind of the sort of situation that I see between the CTO and the co-founder of a startup. Sometimes as well, the co-founder moves him or herself to be CEO. Sometimes they still call themselves CEO and CTO, co-founding CTO, and it causes a lot of confusion in the business. So that's a very clear sign that there's actually conflict between CTO and CEO. And I can tell, and I will say this, I can tell conflict between a CEO and the CTO without even knowing the company, just by looking at the company LinkedIn profiles. And if the CEO has co-founding CTO and CEO in his or her job title, and there's also a CTO in the business, then I know that usually that means that there's actually a challenge between them two. So that's kind of the way, but I'm not sure this is answering your question, Daniel. So feel free to type a reply or something else, because this is a question time, not lecturing time. So I don't want to be lecturing you for too long. So I'm happy to have other questions or discuss this particular question more depth if needed.
So just because we've had a bit of an increase of people watching, so nice for you to join us, just to give them an update in case they missed it at the start of the event of how we're doing things. So all you have to do is say either I'll volunteer or little hands up emoji into the chat or the question box. Alternatively, you can give a little bit of an overview question so we know what sort of thing you're going to be asking. You'll then be invited on the stage to have a chat directly with Adelina. You don't need to have your video on. As you've seen, we're already very friendly bunch. If you've already joined in and was able to catch the end of Adelina and Suzanne's chat. So yeah, if you have any questions or if you fancy having a bit of a conversation, please do step forward.
Thank you, Megan.
Although while we wait, I am very intrigued to hear more about sort of LinkedIn and things like that of kind of, or maybe other, not necessarily LinkedIn, but other little flags that maybe a CTO could look out for when to kind of be aware of that maybe the rest of the C-suite isn't particularly happy, or maybe they want more support on a particular issue, but don't feel like they can ask it. How can a CTO step up and help their teammate out?
Well, I mean, so, right. So sorry, because I'm trying to, because I was thinking actually about other signs that I can see without anybody telling me that there are challenges between the CTO and the CEO. And by the way, that is the most common challenge that I've seen in the company, the CTO and the CEO. But do you mean, do you mind clarifying your question a little bit more? Because I'm not sure.
Yeah,
quite.
I'll also do this properly and come back.
There you go. Body language helps.
Make things a bit more properly. So say so one, if say you're a CTO in a company and you feel everything's going fine, because sometimes some problems you have no idea what's going on in other departments or other people's heads. What are things you can look out for in meetings or just day-to-day life that kind of indicates that maybe your fellow C-suite colleagues might like some support without overstepping bounds or being too presumptuous?
Okay, so okay, people might need support. I mean, one of the things that can be quite common is when people. So if imagine the other way around, if you're in the audience and one of your colleagues makes a presentation, let's say the CFO or the CMO, because if you, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know this, and if you don't, I'll spell it out. One of the patterns that I've seen is that CMOs, chief marketing officers, and POs, but not chief product officers, but chief people officers, so HR effectively and marketing, often seem to feel that they have a lower seat at the table at the C-suite and in the at the boardroom, because often they can be considered fluffy subjects, fluffy areas. So, for example, if one of your colleagues in these departments or the others has made a presentation and nobody's asked any questions, and you can tell nobody's asked questions because it doesn't make sense to them. They don't understand, okay, how is this aligned with the business? You can, for example, in the meeting itself, try and help them with some questions by saying things like, can you tell us a bit more about what was it about X that made you put it in your roadmap or in your plan? So kind of give them an excuse to tell a story to the board about something more specific. And then that will normally kind of get the juices flowing a little bit more. But also you can offer, outside of the meeting, you can come forward and offer people some support and say, hey, that presentation, it was really, it's really hard for you probably to deliver that, or I could, I know it's, it might have been hard for you. If you want to have a chat about it, I'm here. And making yourself available. I think people often underestimate how much it means to just come forward to others and say, hey, how are you doing? So we just have a catch up. And a catch up, if you live close enough to each other, even a walk in the park, to be honest, can build a work relationship better than just always being on Zoom. And it's, these kind of situations where, or if someone keeps asking for feedback on something, someone keeps asking for things and you see that nobody else is replying, maybe, it's worth kind of coming forward and having a chat with them and thinking about analyzing what made you perhaps not want to reply, but you understand that, you understand that this is something that probably other people feel as well. And that's why you can kind of offer to have a chat with them. So you can see what they're trying to achieve with them and maybe give them some pointers as to how it comes across, in a friendly way. I mean, it could be a million type of things that could trigger people into having little signs that they need help, or if someone keeps changing or canceling a meeting over and over and over again. There are obviously organizational things sometimes, but often it's an unconscious or conscious decision trying to avoid a difficult subject, something they're really struggling with or they feel out of depth with. And I think one of the things that people underestimate on the C-suite is being the first one who says, I don't know. We would help our colleagues a lot more if we, or the CEO, especially, and the COO, the CFO, these are the people that normally set the culture in the organization, in the C-suite. If those people, especially, but also, anyone around the C-suite, to say, I don't know, or, but I'll look into it, or let's chat about it more, because at the moment I'm not quite there yet. These kind of things are extremely important. In fact, actually, I will tell you a little story about that. there was a CTO that I worked with, late 50s, big company, and he would never hire someone to work in his engineering team if during the interview they didn't say "I don't know" to a question that he raised that he knew is impossible to know the answer to. He knew it's just an impossible question. It was a trap, effectively. And he would set this trap for people to see if they felt safe enough to say "I don't know" at the interview stage. And if they didn't, he wouldn't give them the job, because they wanted honesty. Now, there's lots of things about that, right? Because in an interview situation, people would kind of go, you're trying to show that you know stuff rather than that you don't know stuff. So it's a pinch of salt kind of situation. I'm not sure I would do it. But that was his method of seeing if people are brave enough to say they don't know, even in a situation that would cost them a job. And those kind of three magic words can be extremely important when it comes to working well with others and helping each other out, I would say. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I haven't thought about it in that way, Megan. Thank you.
Yeah, because it seems like sort of making a space where honest conversation can happen, putting your hands up and being like, there's a reason you're CMO, for example, and why I'm CTO. So please, can you explain it? Seems like one of the quickest sort of ways that a CTO can support their C-suite colleagues. Are there any other like very quick little changes that you wouldn't think would make much of an impact, but actually do have a really positive? And also things that maybe people are doing subconsciously that they're not aware of that actually have huge negative impacts, behaviors they think are just normal and actually aren't working at all.
I don't know if you saw, I wrote a post the other day on LinkedIn that went viral. I've had nearly 250,000 people kind of engaging with it, or impressions or whatever it is. And it shocked me that LinkedIn promoted this, and it was about toxic leadership that looks like mentorship. So one of the things that I actually would like to get across to all the CTOs or anyone who's a manager of any person out there is the fact that what you don't realize when you manage people, often what we don't realize is that when we have a position of higher status and higher authority above someone else, and we effectively have a say whether they have a job or not. I'll come back to that question. That was a really there's a question. Maybe Suzanne wrote that. That's a very, really important comment, I think, that I'll come back to. So when you have a higher status and position of authority over someone else, and effectively you have a say in their life, in their job, and you can make their life impossible, as you imagine, as a manager, you can really make someone's life very hard. Everything you say and the way you say it has enormous impact, emotional impact on the person that you work with. So if you are dismissive, derisive, if you make fun of them in front of others, even if it's in good humor or whatever, all of these things can have very, very strong meaning assigned to them in the head of the person and in the heads of the people observing that situation. So if you, for example, if you ask a question to your manager and they answer with something like, well, this is supposed to be hard. A good engineer or a good VP of engineering should know how to answer this question themselves without needing my help. That kind of comment can completely destroy someone's confidence and make them feel paranoid that they don't know what they're doing, because you've just implied that they are not a good vice president or they're not a good engineer if they don't know the answer to this question. And clearly they don't, because otherwise they wouldn't have asked you. So as a manager or a C-suite, or especially the higher you are in the organization, the more important this is. It's extremely important to realize that everything you say is being looked at and people take meaning out of it. And you make them feel in a certain way because it's you. You have a status above them. And with that kind of, for example, that kind of feedback, the best thing you can do, if you don't know the answer yourself, coming back to Suzanne's point about I don't know, you should actually say, I don't know either. Why don't we both figure it out? But what a lot of managers do instead of saying, I don't know either, this is why I asked you, because I hoped you would know, they pretend, like I said earlier, oh, a good VP should know, a good engineer should know. They pass on that responsibility and that lack of, kind of the weight of the lack of knowledge onto this person to make themselves look better, because actually the manager themselves feels insecure. And these are some of the ways that you can completely destroy the confidence of someone who works for you. I want to come back. I'm going to read the comment that Suzanne wrote. I don't know, in quotation mark. This also relates to an interesting question about senior junior dev relationship that was brought up to the CTO Craft Slack. Yeah, and here's the thing. The CTO, the VP of engineering, the engineering director, the engineering manager, whoever works with the engineers, they are the person who sets that culture up. As a CTO, you cannot absolve yourself from ever saying, I don't know, but expect your team to do it. And this is one of the things that I clarified to this particular CTO, that if he wasn't able to say he doesn't know, why does he expect his team to do it? Do as I do, do as I say, but not as I do. So, you will never say you don't know yourself, but you expect them to do it. Culture comes from the top. It never comes from the bottom. So the CTO, the VP of engineering, the engineering director, whatever job title the person has who works with the engineers, sets the level of safety engineers, junior and senior, feel when feeling able to openly say they don't know something. And the more senior someone is, so for example, if the CTO does it, then the senior dev feels able to do it. Then the junior dev is able to do it because they saw the senior dev doing it. If John, who's been here for 10 years or 5 years, can do that and keep saying that, then maybe I can do it as well. Or if they see other junior people doing it and being praised for it and encouraged with it, rather than being put down in front of someone else, that also creates that culture where people feel safe to say, I don't know. But it's not just about saying, I don't know, but also saying, I don't know, but I'll look into it. Or I don't know, but does anyone else know that could teach me? And that's the best way to answer that kind of question. Thank you, Suzanne, for that comment. It was brilliant. Is there anything you want to add or anything you want to say yourself? Some senior dev have deeply rooted in the M of the RTFM culture, though. That's a difficult thing I find. What's RTFM?
Suzanne, would you be comfortable to be added back onto the stage?
I have deeply rooted in them. Read the fact manual. Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. And read the fucking manual culture is actually quite a damaging thing to a team that has a mix of senior and junior devs. And the leadership can break that. The leadership or the people can break that. Tell me a bit more. This is really interesting. I know we only have 6 minutes, but
Yeah.
you bring superb topics, Suzanne. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll be short. I mean, so in my team, we have a delicate ratio of junior and senior due to the fact that we're a startup and we don't have a lot of money, basically. And so one of my senior, who's an ex-colleague actually, has worked in many companies where the tech culture was very old-fashioned. And was very much in the read the manual kind of way, and he has a tendency to do that with junior devs, and I find it really hard to make him shift mentally and say, okay, you can say you don't know, you can say you make mistakes, and you can also take more time for juniors and be more tolerant to the lack of skills so far and actually pass them on to them. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Okay, So here's the thing. So this person hasn't made a mind shift yet. But you know what makes people make the mind shift? Not just that, but being measured against a new mind shift to show them that this is serious, this is real.
Mm.
So, you mentioned the KPIs earlier that you have, for the engineering team. Well, what are the KPIs for this particular person? Measuring their performance. Are you a team player? Actually, when you do that, you're not a team player. So I'm going to mark you down on that. You need to work on that. And we can give you all these tools to work on it. But if you, so for example, by next month or next quarter or next catch up, whatever it is, I want to hear how many people you helped with stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that reinforcing rather than just saying it, because like when you train a dog and you say, don't chew the shoes, and the dog keeps chewing the shoes until you start putting either pepper on the shoes or start kind of, I don't know, doing the newspaper thing with the dog, whatever it is that you need to do to stop that dog chewing the shoes. You don't keep buying new shoes. You enforce that message that chewing shoes is not okay. So one of the corporates that I worked with, they used to literally link the company values to the individual performance indicators of each person. So if, for example, one of the company values was me, us, not me, something like that, so which is basically a team player, right? They would be measuring how did you help colleagues in the last month with stuff, or considering that this is an area of weakness for you because you brought this other culture with you from the other company, and explaining, look, you are operating on a different operating system. You're operating on this kind of Windows 95, but actually we have Windows 10 here, or Vista, if not quite there yet. And kind of saying
he's more of a Mac OS person, but yeah.
Right, okay, fair enough, but you see what I mean? It's kind of saying, I need you to update to this operating system, and we will measure you how fast you're updating on this operating system. Until you put numbers and measurements and bonus links to that kind of thing, people don't take it seriously, especially more senior, more experienced devs, because they feel like they've been there and done it and they know it all. And actually, that's just damaging the other people. Superb questions, Suzanne. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm so glad you came on the call.
Thank you.
You made this call a success. If this call is a success, it's because of you. Because you brought
Joel.
Joel as well, absolutely. But you kind of I really loved the stuff that you brought on. It was brilliant. And I mean, Daniel's question was fantastic as well. I mean, I love it every time. This is why I love these kind of Q&As, because I have lots of topics in my head, but what's relevant, what's interesting to you guys, that's what matters, Superb points. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wants to say anything? Because we only have probably about 90 seconds left. So feel free to type something down. But I want to take a special thank you, say a special thank you to Joel, because he, I think, warmed up the scene for other people like Suzanne to come forward. So thank you, Joel, for helping us with that, and the brilliant comments that you made as well. And thank you to Daniel and Suzanne as well for bringing such beautiful questions to the table. Absolutely phenomenal. Please do give Megan some feedback with regards to what would have helped you make the session even better, and what would have helped you know what the session is about, or anything at all. Please feel free to do so. And do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you, Megan, for organizing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who got involved. Mary, I've just seen your questions in the question box, so we can see if we can quickly get one more out, if everyone is able just to stick around for a little bit longer. So Mary asks, have you lost confidence in what you know is right? And if so, what did you do to continue leading?
Oh, what a beautiful question, Mary. First, there's so many ways to skin this cat, right? And I'm going to try to skin it really quickly. Have you lost confidence in what you know is right? So when we lose confidence in what we know is right, I would first like to look at what is it that happened that made one lose confidence in what they know is right? Is it because someone who seems to have more experience and authority than us gave us feedback? And I mean, Mary, if you feel able to come on stage with no camera and just your voice, I would love to talk to you about it. But if not, I'll just try and ramble on my own, which I find quite weird, if I'm honest. But if you feel able to come on stage, just tell Megan. I'd love to chat to you about it because you don't know your name and you don't have to show us your face. Just you'll be a voice in the dark, and I'd love to hear that voice in the dark. But in the meantime, I'll just carry on with my answers and see how we get on. And you tell me if I'm on the wrong track as well. But effectively, what I want to know is what is it that made the person lose confidence in what they know is right? Because if it is, I was having this very conversation with a female founder yesterday, actually. If it is someone who seems to have more experience and more authority and older than you and more successful than you, whatever, giving you that kind of feedback or giving you advice that, okay, I'll have a read for that as well. Giving you advice that you implement and you backfires and you realize it doesn't work, then it's worth looking at what made you take that on board. What was your thought process when you kind of agreed to take that kind of feedback on board, and how did that, what's the story you told yourself when you received that feedback? I'm just going to read your comment and then I'll come back to my answer. I'm a manager, but I am young. I sometimes mold myself to the CEO founder. I would like to stop doing that. Yeah, I don't know if you have a mentor or not. I mean, a lot of the managers in companies, receive a mentor. I'm working with a female engineering manager at the moment, first-time manager, and she asks me all the questions that she doesn't know who else to ask. And it's exactly this, it's exactly about how do I discover my own way of leading. Because like I never, to be honest, when I attended leadership training, I never liked this whole 4 leading styles and all this stuff, because it was like, okay, fine, but how does that help me actually do my job day to day? So what I find is that it helps enormously to have someone to talk to. It helps enormously to have a role model. I'm looking to go back to university to study business or leadership. Yeah. Okay, well, actually, if we don't mind, I'm going to make a comment on the business or leadership studying. I will promise you one thing. Studying in university, business or leadership, will not fix this problem for you. Because studying in university, it's extremely abstract and extremely academic. It doesn't actually relate to the reality of leading. You will learn a lot of abstract concepts that you can get from books. But in all honesty, you will not actually learn how to be, from my experience, okay? And I can give you a real example about this as well. You will not learn how this helps you in your day-to-day. It's quite a difficult thing, quite a different thing to learn about leadership and management and business in an abstract concept, and quite a different thing to actually do it in the day-to-day. Because leadership is, frankly, I would say, if I were to summarize leadership in 3 words, it would be empathy, communication, and a relentless self-awareness and drive to be better all the time. The self-awareness bit you will never get in a university course. Neither with the empathy. Some of the communication skills you might from a university course, but I'll tell you a simple example about that, actually, and I hope you can take what I've said with a pinch of salt, but I'm speaking from experience. I actually applied in 2009 to do an MBA at Cranfield University, and they rejected me because they said my IQ wasn't high enough. And I laughed because I knew my IQ was high enough, but clearly I hadn't scored highly on that test. I did everything, better, good in every other aspect, but not that one. Anyway, scroll five years on, I just started my business without them and just did everything, just, did the business without any kind of university course, whatever. 5 years on, they called me and asked me to teach on the Cranfield MBA and be a guest lecturer. And I said to them, I'm not good enough to attend as a student, but I'm good enough to teach it. And when I spoke to people who come out of just doing MBAs and trying to learn leadership in university, you will learn lots of big concepts, but the day to day, I'm sorry to say, it's not going to happen. So I don't know exactly what's the story behind your questions, but I would say that I'm 99% sure a university course won't fix it. If you want, I'm more than happy to kind of have a private chat. Okay, you are giving me the best advice. Thank you. I've been managing for a long time at different organizations. It just occurred to me that I should pursue an MBA because there's respect there in the degree. Well, it depends. So MBAs, from my experience, and I just keep in mind, I've worked with CEOs and CTOs in companies from 50 people to actually over 100,000 people. Recently, I actually kind of had some sessions with people literally in companies the size of a city. And I will tell you, an MBA splits people in two camps. Splits people into the ones that respect an MBA person and they think, oh, that's brilliant, and the ones who avoid MBA people like the plague. From my experience, the leadership of companies that avoid MBA people tend to be the ones that are innovative, cutting edge. This is just my experience. I may be completely wrong on a larger scale. I can only speak from my experience, okay? I mean, I've been running my business for 11 years. I've worked with probably not 1,000 yet, but hundreds of startups and companies by now, of different levels, different sizes. And the one thing I can guarantee is that an MBA desk will split people. So we'll either attract, so it depends. I suppose it's all about fit for purpose. You know, an MBA has its space somewhere. And if you, it depends what you're trying to achieve. If the kind of people you want to work with are the people who value MBAs, then then that's the right thing to do. It's all about fit for purpose and what you're trying to achieve with it, to be honest. Christian, fake news. The degree itself is maybe an enabler, I presume, to get a job, or in some cases a promotion. But otherwise, I think you get more respect of the work you do on the daily basis and the result of it over time, in my honest opinion. Spot on, Christian. I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what where I was coming from with it as well. So it's nice to have someone else who agrees, but I went to work straight out of high school and always got promoted from all my jobs in management, always very quickly. So I know I have the skills. I just never knew that people really pursue this professionally. Okay. Anyway, Mary, I actually have another meeting, believe it or not, in about 15 minutes. I really need to get going with that one. In my current position, please feel free to connect with me privately, Mary, on LinkedIn as well. I'm in a current position where I've been able to help and mentor structured team, and have a lot of senior people listen to me. But this bending I don't like that logical. Be fair, I'd like to become more assertive. Okay, the one thing I will say is this: the lack of assertiveness to speak of I would be willing to bet this that will not be addressed by you just getting a title. You'll just be someone who still lacks assertiveness but has a title. What I find is that lack of assertiveness often comes, and I've worked with women. One woman I worked with, how many people? I think it was 40,000 people she was in charge of. And she had a similar challenge. And I will tell you, the assertiveness is a story that you tell yourself, a story that will not go away no matter how many titles you get. I mean, this person, I think, had about 5 different titles, including Cambridge, Oxford, and Harvard under their belt. So assertiveness, it's about the story that you tell yourself about why you should bend to authority. And a lot of us have this drilled into us from university, from family, from whatever. So I would say it's more of an exercise of self-awareness, which is what I mentioned earlier, which I'm telling you, sorry to say, but I never found a university course that addressed that properly. And to look at what is it about you, what is the stories that you tell yourself that make you want to mold yourself in that way. So anyway, that's kind of happy to have a private chat if you want about it. But anyway, thank you so much for the superb questions, Mary. Lovely, kind of getting your brilliant questions. So thank you for your comment as well, Christian. It was lovely to hear someone agrees.
Thank
you. Sorry. Go ahead, Megan.
I've added Adelina's contact details in the chat. If you just scroll up a little, you'll see them. And as Adelina said, I'm sure she would love to hear any more of your questions over on LinkedIn. Remember, you can also ask them in the Ask for Help channel on the CTO Craft Slack. If you want to have more of an open conversation, have members of the community help as well. Thank you so much, Adelina, for joining us. This was really informative, and thank you for everyone who was brave enough to stand up and ask a question, be it on stage or off stage. Just got a couple of housekeeping things before I will let you go. Thank you so much for sticking around. Our next CTO Craft online event will be a Bytes event. Will be happening online next Friday at 12:30 British Summer Time, where Mary Williams and Hal Carver will evaluate the differences and similarities in how to approach developing people in hard tech versus soft skills, such as great pair programming and people management. The link is already in the chat as well. Also this week, I'm sure you've all seen that we have announced CTO Craft Con Winter 2022. It's happening on the 15th till the 16th of November, and this online conference will be filled with in-depth discussions of what it means to be a senior leader in a technology organization, how to build a solid foundation with other C-level leaders, very relevant after our discussion today, and so much more. The conference also features a day-long unconference where you'll be able to learn from CTO Craft community members. And I've also posted a link in the chat. Thank you all again. Take care. Hope to see you next week and hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
And if I could say actually one more thing, and I'll put a link, I'll try and put a link to it here. I wrote a post about this. It's not exactly about this, Mary, but I'll put a link here so you can see it, about the story that we tell ourselves in our minds to make us do certain things. Anyway, lovely seeing you all. I have to run, but hopefully we'll do this again. Let Megan know if you want us to do it again. Okay?
Please
Take care. Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.